What's up, Beans? Alucard here. Happy Boxing Day. Today, we're going to rank the Rocky movies. So I'm sure, much like most of y'all, I grew up on the Rocky movies. My grandpa and I used to watch them ad nauseum when I was little, the first five at least. And so, yeah, I have a deep love for the Rocky movies. And this is my ranking. So let's start off with number 8 and my least favorite of the Rocky. Now, let me preface this by saying I love all the Rocky movies. I do. I love them all. This is my least favorite. 2006's Rocky Balboa. Yeah, this is my least watched Rocky movie. This one is essentially about this guy, this boxer named Mason Dixon. Yeah, Mason Dixon, yeah. Anyway, he sees like an AI rendition of him versus Rocky, and Rocky wins in the AI version. So of course he takes, he takes offense at this. So he challenges Rocky to a fight, and Rocky surprisingly agrees. Let's start off with the negatives. Mason Dixon is the most meh character. I didn't care about this guy at all. I know he's supposed to be the villain, but if you want Rocky, you got to have a good villain, and this guy was just so meh. Another thing about this one, oh, and by the way, I'm going to give spoilers if you haven't seen any of these. My apologies. One of my biggest gripes about this one too is they killed off Adrian. This was at a point where, like, every Rocky movie, it seemed like he killed off another character, and I don't know, that got a little annoying after a while. But I mean, you're gonna kill off Adrian. Adrian is the freaking heart and soul of the Rocky movies. Like, what? Like, I get that that's what happens in real life. I understand that. But it's like you're going to have this series and not have the heart and soul of the series in it. I don't know. That still boggles my mind, and I really didn't like that. And then, he strikes up this friendship with Marie, who I like the callback to the original movie. She's like the little girl in the original movie that he kind of gives advice to and stuff. But I don't know. I didn't really like her character, and I don't know. They kind of hinted at a possible love interest thing. They didn't go anywhere with it, thank goodness. But yeah, that whole thing just kind of felt flat to me. And I also didn't like the ESPN style fight that they did. I mean, I guess it was okay, but I don't know. It's just not. It doesn't scream Rocky to me. I did like Milo Ventimiglia as Robert, Rocky Jr. I thought he did really well, and I love that he has that little, that little lip thing that Sylvester Stallone has too. I don't know. I just thought that was a neat little thing. I like all the old school people that were in it, like Paulie and Duke and Spider Rico from the very first movie. I thought that was nice little touches. But overall, the movie was just kind of flat, and I didn't at the time. I think they were kind of trying to go with like this was Rocky's last hurrah, and to me it just felt flat. All right, coming in at number 7 for me is Creed 2. Creed 2 is the continuation of the story of Adonis Johnson, aka Adonis Creed, Apollo Creed's son. This time he fights Ivan Drago's son. Ivan Drago is the man that killed his father in part 4. So this one is basically just a retread of Rocky 4, just using different characters. It's extremely predictable, and to me, a lot of what made the first Creed so good is it's just completely lost here. And as far as we know, Rocky's not going to be in Creed 3, so this is really Rocky's last hurrah. I, I get that he wants to retire the character. He's played him now in 8 movies. And he's been trying to retire since the second movie. I like that there was closure for Rocky's story when he reunites with Robert and everything at the end. Um, it's nice to see Dolph Lundgren back as Drago. They actually gave him a little bit of depth here. And Michael B. Jordan as Adonis. I think he really just nails the character in both of his movies. Um, but yeah, overall, kind of skippable. All right, coming in at number 6 for me is Rocky 5. I know a lot of people cannot stand this movie, and it's their least favorite, and I get it. But I actually kind of like this movie for different reasons. Um, I like the fact that it was very different from the previous 4. It takes Rocky into the like trainer mentor type of thing, which eventually he goes on to do with Adonis in the Creed movies. So in this one, Rocky develops a brain injury from his fight with Drago in part 4. So he's kind of forced to retire and kind of gets roped into training this new kid named Tommy Gunn. Now Tommy Gunn was played by real life boxer Tommy Morrison, who was John Wayne's nephew in real life. His acting left a bit to be desired. He was really not an actor. He was a legit boxer. He was a pretty decent boxer. I used to watch his fights. But yeah, his performance is very uneven in this movie. Sometimes he's actually pretty good and kind of likable, and then at other times you're just like, that was kind of cringy. And the other performance that gets a lot of crap dumped on it is Sage Stallone's performance as Rocky Jr., aka Robert. I thought for being a 13-year-old kid or whatever, I thought he did pretty good, honestly. He was, he's a stuck-up little brat, basically. Some of the things that I really do like about this movie, I love the street fight at the end between Rocky and Tommy. It's totally different than like I say, it's totally different than the other Rockies. But the fight is fantastic. They cars, they're using weapons. When Rocky punches George Washington Duke at the end of the fight, I remember everybody cheering. Yeah. Speaking of George Washington Duke, played by Richard Gant, is amazing. He's like this Don King ripoff, and he's so loud and boisterous, and you hate him every time you see him. You just like, oh, this freaking guy. So when he gets his little comeuppance at the end, it's really satisfying. Of course, some of the stupid stuff is like, Rocky has brain damage and he's fighting this guy in the street, but the little spark that gets Rocky back into it plays into one of my favorite scenes in the entire franchise, which is when he remembers Mickey talking to him about the cufflink. It's played absolutely beautifully by Burgess Meredith and Sylvester Stallone. And it was so good to see Mickey again after all these years. And the other highlight of this particular movie on the soundtrack, most of the soundtrack is not that great, but it does have the song called Measure of a Man performed by Elton John, and I love that song. All right, coming in at number 5, we have Rocky 4. Now, I'm talking about the original Rocky 4, not the new directors, Sylvester Stallone, Ivan, what is it, Rocky versus Drago or whatever. No, this is talking the original Rocky 4. Rocky 4, basically this Russian superhuman named Drago challenges Apollo Creed to an exhibition match. And in the exhibition match, he kills Apollo Creed. And so the rest of the story is basically Rocky kind of getting revenge, sort of. So 2 things right off the bat. 1, they kill off Apollo. How can you kill off Apollo? One of the best characters in the whole franchise. 2, the complete unrealistic vibe of the entire movie pretty much. It's just so over the top and so like 80s American, just yeah, like the whole thing is like it's just so over the top. It's kind of like the ultimate 80s cheese factor, I guess you could say. And there are so many montages in this movie that it's like half the movie's a montage. Not that I'm against that, but it's like, all right, I get it. But some of the highlights in this one for me personally, the whole Apollo entrance to the fight with Drago is just fantastic. It's so crazy. With James Brown performing "Living in America," and the endless, I love the endless nicknames too during the introduction. Just cracks me up every time. And my two favorite things about this Rocky movie has the best soundtrack. I mean, it's got "Burning Heart," "Living in America," and of course, "No Easy Way Out." And also, this is probably my second favorite of all the fight scenes in any of the Rocky movies. It's such a great fight. I mean, it's back and forth, and Drago's so menacing and tall. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5", and Stallone's what, 5'9". So yeah, it's kind of like the ultimate, it's kind of David versus Goliath type of deal. All right, coming in at number 4, we have Creed from 2015. Creed is the story of Adonis Johnson, aka Adonis Creed, Apollo Creed's son, and kind of him coming to terms with him being Apollo Creed's son. And he eventually gets Rocky to help train and mentor him. So my biggest gripe with the Creed movie is it's a little long. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. Could have cut a little bit out. That's really my only kind of major complaint, is that it's a little too long. It's really kind of like a fundamental underdog story, kind of like the first Rocky. That this movie really works, and it works a lot because of Michael B. Jordan's performance as Adonis. He, like I said in the preview, he completely nails the role of Adonis. And his chemistry with Sylvester Stallone is fantastic. You really feel it. You really feel like they're family. And of course, his relationship with Bianca, played by Tessa Thompson, is really fantastic too. There's a real big love story there. It's sort of like Rocky and Adrian, kind of. All right, and appropriately at number 3, I have Rocky 3. So Rocky 3, the setup is Rocky's now the world champ. He's kind of living in luxury, just kind of taking it easy, and he's fighting all these guys that really pose no threat to his title. So he's going to keep the title for a long time if he keeps going this way. So he's challenged by an up-and-comer named Clubber Lang, played by the incredible Mr. T. Clubber Lang is too much for the newfangled Rocky, and he takes his title away. So Rocky has to relearn what it's like to be the underdog again. A couple of things I really hate about this movie. Of course, they kill off Mickey. Who, yeah, he's the cranky old, offensive, trainer guy, but there's something about him. You just love him. I don't know what it is. He's kind of like the cranky old uncle, But this one's also kind of an 80s cheese fest as well. But it's done mostly fun. There's the scene with Thunder Lips, played by Hulk Hogan, in his best role, I dare say. It kind of brings a little levity to the whole thing, and it's just fantastic. And I'm a big wrestling fan, and I was a big Hogan fan, especially back then. So I love that scene. So other standout performances are Carl Weathers as Apollo. He really becomes very likable, and because the first two movies, he's the enemy, but he's charismatic and stuff, so you care. But in this one he really becomes great friends and a trainer and everything else, and more like a brother really to Rocky. And of course we have to talk about Mr. T as Clubber Lang. He's probably the greatest villain. Uh, he's so stone cold, just that's like the stare and the. I mean, he just nailed it, and he has some fantastic lines in this one too. There's a part where an interviewer, and it's one of my favorite lines in the entire franchise. The interviewer is like, "Do you have any predictions for the match?" And they give the mic over to Clubber Lang, and he's like, "Prediction? Pain." Oh man, it gets me every time. I've seen it like 100 times, and I love it every single time. Mr. T is like the perfect bad guy in this movie. And of course it has Eye of the Tiger in it. Who doesn't love Eye of the Tiger? And this movie was also the introduction of the Rocky statue in Philadelphia, which is a real statue that I desperately want to visit. It's on my bucket list. I'm gonna visit it. And of course the fight between Rocky and Clubber Lang at the end, because they fight twice. You know, he loses in the first fight. Rocky loses in the first fight. And the second fight is when he really perfects that stick and move thing. And the fights, that's another fight. It's just great. The fight choreography, especially in the first like 4 movies, are like that's the best boxing scenes in any movie, bar none. I don't care who you are. All right, next up, number 2, and this may be controversial for some, but I'm going with the original, Rocky from 1976, as my second favorite of the Rocky franchise. Of course, this is the story of the underdog Rocky Balboa as he gets a shot at the world heavyweight title held by Apollo Creed. This really is the ultimate underdog story. You know, Apollo sees Rocky in a book, basically, and Rocky's nickname is what stands out to him, the Italian Stallion. And he's like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. So he gives an opportunity to Rocky for the heavyweight championship of the world. The end fight between him and Apollo is magnificent. So he ends up taking Apollo to the limit. I'd like to point out a few more things about this first movie. It really shows Rocky's love of animals. Like he has the turtles, Coffin Link. He has some fish. He has Butkus the dog. If you're an animal person, you know, like I am, that really hits home. And of course, Adrian works at the pet shop, and you know it's the beginning of their love story, and it's very much opposites attract. You know, he's kind of this rough and tumble street fighter kinda, and she's this meek librarian type, you know, that works at the pet store. So it's complete opposites attract type of thing, but it totally works, and in large part to the acting of Sylvester Stallone and Talia Shire. And of course, I also want to highlight Carl Weathers as Apollo. He is kind of the ultimate loud, brash, you know, egotistical villain, yet he's completely compelling. Every time he was on screen, you just like, man, this guy, it's just, you can't keep your eyes off of him. So it was, and he's so smooth in the ring too. He's such a smooth, you know, boxer. And Rocky is very clunky and very amateurish. So again, opposites attract kind of thing, you know. And of course, we have to talk a little bit about the soundtrack to the first movie. Of course, it has "Gonna Fly Now," which is kind of universally the Rocky song during all the montages and stuff. And of course, it has "Take It Back," the little a cappella song. I think it was written by Frank Stallone. So that leads me to my favorite Rocky movie, Rocky 2. I know, probably a bit of a controversy here, but anyway, Rocky Rocky 2 is the continuation of part 1, where Rocky gets another shot at Apollo's world title. So at this point, after the first movie, Rocky decides to retire, and he tries to get some jobs elsewhere. And that's probably my biggest complaint about Rocky 2, is that they spend a little too much time on him doing the job search. He does all these things. He tries to act in commercials and stuff, and he ends up getting a job at like the meat plant, like cleaning up stuff and stuff. I don't know. I think it was a little too long on that mode. But some of the things I love about this movie, of course, is the Rocky Adrian love story. Culminating in the marriage, and ultimately having Robert Rocky Jr. Of course, in this one, Adrian falls into a coma after she gives birth to Rocky Jr. And so for like kind of the second half of the movie, she's kind of out of it for a little while, and Rocky just keeps going back and visit her, and at the hospital, and he doesn't really want to leave. He doesn't want to train for the fight. He just wants his wife to be okay, kind of deal. And it really just adds to his love of Adrian. Of course, in this one, Mickey trains Rocky to fight right-handed. Rocky is a known southpaw, which is a left-handed fighter, which you kind of have to fight a little bit differently when you're fighting a left-hand fighter. But anyway, so Mickey teaches Rocky how to fight right-handed to kind of throw off Apollo. And, well, I mean, it ultimately worked, so. And speaking of training, the training montage in part 2 is probably my favorite of all the training montages, which culminates in him running up the stairs, through Philadelphia and up the stairs to where the Rocky statue ends up being in 3. And the Bill Conti soundtrack to this movie is phenomenal. The opening song during the opening credits is one of my favorite songs ever. It culminates in the epic fight between Rocky and Apollo, which almost goes the distance, but not quite. It goes to the final round. And in my personal opinion, this is the best boxing match in the history of cinema. No doubt, no question. It's just, like, every movement is just amazing in this movie. And of course the end, when Rocky hits him with the left, and they both go down, and you're like, who's gonna get up? And the get on your feet. It's such a mind-blowing ending. So I hope you have a fantastic Boxing Day. I know that's not what Boxing Day means, but that's what I'm going with today. So if you would like, comment, and subscribe, that would be fantastic. I'd really appreciate it. And other than that, I will see all you guys later. Remember, stay spooky.